The storm was now far away, and nearly all spent. The sun shone brightly upon Aron's boat, and Iriya, the mermaid whom he had lifted onto the deck, was slowly drying in the heat of it. She and Aron sat there together for some time, as each of them had many questions for the other. She told him all about the Thane's palace that lies at the bottom of the sea, overlooking a great city that many mermaids call home. Then she told him of whom she'd agreed to marry, and how he travelled from another province that's ruled by a different Thane. At her request, the boy told Iriya all about his own family, his village, and his profession. That she found particularly interesting.
"So why did you go diving for pearls under that terrible storm?"
she asked. "Because," he began, "it's nearly my birthday, and in my family, everyone finds a black pearl for themselves before the age of 20 years old. I'm running out of time."
"What would happen if you don't find one?"
Aron shrugged. "It's never happened before. I imagine I'll be in for a fair deal of shame and embarrassment." The girl's eyes narrowed in concern.
"So you won't be hurt?"
"God, no," laughed the boy. No, it's nothing like that. I just can't really imagine what my father might say to it."
"Why?"
"He seems to want it more than I do," Aron explained. "He pushed me out the door and made me take to the sea this morning, despite the weather." Iriya took some time before asking her next question, which caused the boy to smile.
"Do you think he's proud of you, really?"
she said. "Yeah, I think so," he admitted. "I think he just wants me to prove my worth to everyone else."
"I should thank him for that."
Aron suddenly looked confused. "Why do you say that?"
"If you weren't out here on the sea today,"
she answered,
"I don't think I would have found anyone whom I could have asked for shelter."
"Could you have swum to the shallows, where the serpent can't reach you?" he suggested.
"I could,"
she replied.
"but our likes don't typically get on, do they?"
Aron let out an awkward laugh. "I suppose not." A long silence followed, for it dawned on both of them in that moment that climbing aboard Aron's boat was not a long-term solution for the condemned mermaid. The boy would have to dock sooner or later, and returning home having befriended such a greatly feared creature of the deep might spell trouble for him and her alike.
"There is an island southwest of here,"
Iriya remembered.
"Do you know of it?"
"I'm not entirely sure where here is, if I'm honest."
It has several smaller islands surrounding it, if that's any help."
"Ah, I know," he realised. "We call those the Starry Islands. You want me to take you there?"
"I would be very grateful if you would," she said. "Does anyone live there?"
Aron smiled. "I don't think so." In the west, the golden sun touched the horizon, and the surrounding water and sky began to glow all kinds of warm colours. Iriya gazed at the pretty view from where she sat, and Aron stood and turned to look at it. He suddenly yawned after rising quickly, then said, "Perhaps we'll sail there in the morning, Iriya. I should sleep." The girl nodded.
"Am I to sleep out here?"
"No," he replied. "You can take the bed."
"And you will have the floor?"
she protested.
"I can't."
"Don't worry about me. I can sleep anywhere," he insisted.
"But you've already done enough."
"Iriya, you're my guest," Aron smiled. "It's rude to refuse my offer." He opened the door to the cabin, then held out a hand so as to carry the girl inside should she consent. Doing so, she opened her arms to him, and before long she was hoisted into the air, with only her long tail now touching the deck and dragging behind them. A simple happiness washed over the both of them in the cosy warmth of the cabin's interior. Aron laid Iriya down on the bed that stood to the starboard side, and she then lifted her tail and coiled it round so that she fit entirely upon it. Beside the bed was a cupboard, one that was once freestanding but had been nailed into the wall so as to prevent it from toppling while sailing rough waters. For that reason, it was also kept locked unless someone were using it. A long table ran along the back wall of the room, upon which were scattered many maps, other papers, odd tools, and writing equipment. To the port side was a trapdoor that led below deck, as well as a couple of chairs that had swayed out of their usual places at the table amidst the storm. There was also a chest of drawers that, like the cupboard, was both lockable and locked in place. Aron opened the top drawer. There he deposited the compass that was in his pocket, and withdrew a tinderbox. In the present moment, the light of the sunset still shone through the portside windows, but the boy knew that it would get very dark very quickly, so he took out a match from the box as well as the flint and steel. After several failed attempts, he eventually got the match to burn. Then, with his hand shielding the flame, he took it about the room and lit the lanterns that hung from the ceiling. Iriya watched him do this, and was in awe of the human's way of things. Fire was rarely seen by mermaids, and she felt especially privileged to witness such controlled and purposeful use of it. She then found herself somewhat attracted to the boy, although, acknowledging its strangeness, she tried her best to dismiss that feeling. She forced her attention onto the lanterns themselves, and admired the flickering flames. They were nothing like any of the lights found in the dark places of the ocean, and she found them very beautiful. Aron took a lantern below deck, where there was a sort of bathroom, equipped with a few flannels, towels, toothbrushes, and a barrel of fresh water. Despite his clothes smelling of damp after the rain, he didn't change nor strip out of them at all. Given the floor was his bed that night, he'd rather sleep fully clothed, and he figured rightly that he'd end up swimming at some point on the morrow, where the seawater would wash him and his clothes at least a little bit. He had offered a toothbrush to Iriya, but she politely refused. She told him that mermaids clean their teeth with a bristly plant they call mantares. They fashion brushes out of its leaves to take into the deep where the plant cannot grow. She insisted that she could find some in the shallows around the Starry Islands, which freed the boy of any more hassle carrying her around this night. Once he returned from below, the two of them only exchanged a few more words, and it was not long before the lanterns were blown out, and they slept soundly in the dark. Iriya saw no dreams that night, for she slept deeply and for a long, long time. When her eyes finally opened, it took her a fair moment to take in her unusual surroundings. Her recollection of yesterday came back slowly, and finally she noticed that she was alone in the room. Aron was gone. She assumed that he was simply out piloting the boat, as the swaying of the room felt different to before. It had purpose and direction to it. The boy did not return to the cabin for some time, and Iriya weighed up in her mind whether or not it were wise to get out of bed and try to shuffle outside. The height of the door handle dissuaded her, and she wound her head around the idea that as soon as she would lay there trying to reach it, that would be the unlucky moment when Aron returns. Eventually the boy stepped back into the cabin. Noticing Iriya was awake, he couldn't hide the excitement in his voice. "Good morning," he said.
Good morning,
she returned. "How long have you been laying there?" he asked, amused.
I only just woke up,
she joked. The boy smiled. "Want to go outside?" Iriya nodded eagerly, suddenly realizing how much she wanted that. The room was warm, and she was used to sleeping in the deep ocean. Right then, she wanted nothing more than a cold breeze, especially one that carried the taste of salt. She raised her arms and Aron came to lift her again. He got her to close the cabin door behind them, then slowly took her up the outdoor stairs, minding his feet about her long tail that trailed behind. "You see those?" he asked once they were up on the roof. She recognized the isles on the horizon that Aron was clearly referring to.
The Starry Islands,
she called out, remembering what he had called them yesterday. "Uh-huh," he nodded. "We're nearly there." He let her down to lean against the stern railing. Then he took to the wheel, untying the rope that kept it from turning. The day was bright, the breeze was crisp, and the sea was very calm. Iriya looked out at the approaching islands for a moment, then turned her attention to Aron, and simply smiled. She revelled in the relief of being somewhere safe, and the excitement of having made a friend. As much as she wanted to talk more with him, she was content in that moment to simply watch him command his boat, and take the rare chance to relax. Soon enough, they were rolling up to the shore of the largest island, which was very sandy. Aron made sure to be downwind of it, where the water was calmer. He strolled over to where the mermaid was sitting, and asked with a big smile on his face, "Do you want to jump in from here?" Through the railing, Iriya looked down at the water surface far below. "That's a long way," she laughed.
"You'll jump with me?"
Aron gave a short laugh, indicating his surprise at her reply, but then his smile just grew broader. "Sure," he said. "Give me one moment." He raced down the stairs and all the way to the bow, where he cast the boat's mooring line as far as his strength would grant towards the beach. Then he returned to the mermaid upon the cabin roof. Carrying her once again, he stepped up onto the railing. In a way, it was easy to jump, as the mermaid in his arms blocked his view of how far he would fall. "Ready?" he said.
"No,"
she whimpered with a laugh. The boy took a deep breath. Then, quietly and quickly, he gave himself a simple command. "Alright, 1, 2, 3! Aron leapt off of the cabin roof as far out as he could, and Iriya held onto him tightly. The fall took their breath, and neither of them let out a sound. After a quick swoosh through the air, they were harshly met with cold, salty water that embraced them all over. All sounds were muffled, and the world stilled for a moment. At least, that is how it was for Aron. Iriya, like a fish caught and returned, wriggled out of the boy's grip and darted quickly away. Aron surfaced, wiped his long hair away from his eyes, and began to breathe heavily. His mind suddenly wavered and worried. Perhaps he'd been played. The girl had certainly been a weakling upon his boat, but as soon as she touched the sea, her true strength showed. Now he was in her world. Now he was the vulnerable one. A hand grabbed his with haste, and he was pulled along by the mermaid. Worrying thoughts raced around his head as the splashing water clouded his sight of where they were going. In a moment, it was all over. As it turns out, she simply carried him to the shore. Once he'd cleared his eyes of water and long hair again, he saw Iriya's pretty face staring back at him, smiling. She held the mooring line that he had cast into the water, ready to hand it over to him. Aron's worries vanished. A look of relief must have shown unwillingly on his face as the girl started to laugh. He laughed with her for a second, but the next moment she was already away again, racing around the shallows like a puppy let loose in a field. Finally she could move again, with speed and strength and all by herself. It was a moment of bliss. Aron took the long rope up the beach and moored his boat around a big tree that stood right by the sand. He walked back to the water's edge and beckoned for the girl to come over. He let her know that he was going to explore the island and make sure they were alone there. It was not a large island, and was mostly a dense grove of trees. On his travels, he found an apple tree, though none of its yield were ripe enough to pick, and he saw nothing else of note. While he explored the land, Iriya explored the surrounding water, and swam quickly, seemingly on some determined mission. When she saw Aron emerge from the trees and step back onto the sand, she darted over to be near him and called out, "Aron!" His eyes locked with hers, and they were silent for a moment. "What?" "Guess what I found?" He opened his mouth to make a guess, but quickly gave up. "What is it?" Iriya lifted her arms above the waves and threw a small object over to him. It kicked up the sand as it landed with a thud and didn't bounce. The boy walked over, picked it up and inspected it. A small, round pearl with a beautiful blue tint now lay in his hands, and he found himself beaming brightly, unable to stop. "I'll find you a black one before tomorrow, sailor boy," the mermaid shouted. Aron went to reply, but she was already under the water and on her way again. He half fell into a sitting position and stared out at the sea and sky. He took a deep breath of the cool, fresh air, gripped the blue pearl tightly in his hand, and blinked back a tear in his eye.